Welcome back to the Pride and Puck podcast. This is episode number 15. We are part of the Hockey Hype Australia podcast network. You can find us at www.hockeyhypeaustralia.com.au. And Pride and Puck podcast is on the socials, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Pride Puck Pod. I'm your host, Andrew McDougall. For this episode, we are heading back over to the US. We're heading over to Seattle, and I'm excited about this one because we have Stephen Thompson from Seattle Pride Hockey Association, the president and co-founder of an amazing organization over there in the US. Stephen, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
It's really exciting. I'm not sure if are you heading into summer over there? Is it what's the season over there for you?
We're in spring right now, so the weather's still a little bit temperate in terms of a little bit of rain. So it rained yesterday, but it was 85 degrees just a couple of days prior to that, and I got my boat out and brought a whole bunch of friends onto the lake. So, and then here we are. Now it's raining. So
it sounds like where I live in Melbourne here in Australia, where we have 4 seasons in one day sometimes.
Sounds like Denver. Yeah.
One of the questions I got for you before we get stuck into everything, I was thinking about this before you came on, with the Seattle Kraken in the NHL, who are a new franchise into the NHL only recently. Are you surprised about how good the Seattle Kraken, the whole franchise has gone, or is it what you sort of expected being involved with hockey in Seattle?
Admittedly, I kind of was thinking that the Kraken would take off a little bit like Las Vegas. When Vegas started, what is it, 6 years ago now, I followed them right away and just fell in love with their gameplay and their organization. And so I ended up actually going to Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Finals in Las Vegas to see them perform. And I thought for sure the Seattle Kraken would be very similar or a similar story, but wasn't such the case. And obviously we didn't make a first-year playoff round. We made a very brief visit to the playoffs, and then unfortunately this year we didn't make it again. So I'm hopeful that the coaching shakeup will make an impact in the following season.
And for people who don't know you or the Seattle Pride Hockey Association, who is Stephen Thompson, in your own words?
So I grew up going to Seattle Thunderbirds games, and the Seattle Thunderbirds are part of the Canadian Hockey League, and then their Western Hockey League division. So or conference, or however you want to look at it, is what Canadian Hockey League spans most of Canada and then the US. And that said, the Western Hockey League, as part of the Pacific Northwest Conference, or division, I should say, has about 5 teams. And so Seattle Thunderbirds, grew up going to those games. My dad would take me, and I just fell in love with the sport from the get-go. And so it wasn't until 2017 when the Seattle Thunderbirds went to the Ed Chayanawith Cup, and it, for some reason, motivated me to learn to play. And so as a gay guy, who had never played sports before, I was very scared, hesitant, unsure what to expect. And I ended up having like a really positive experience, and it inspired me to create an organization, which is now the Seattle Pride Hockey Association, to give other community members, not even just the LGBT community, anybody in underrepresented communities, an opportunity or a safe place to be part of an organization that is inclusive and accepting of everybody, no matter your background. And so I didn't, not everybody takes that leap of faith like I did and just goes for it, but I wanted people to have a resource to reach out to get that candid information. And so that's why Seattle Pride Hockey Association came around. So I didn't start learning to play until, 7 years ago. And my number one favorite player, Matthew Barzal, who's on the New York Islanders, was just a player that I loved watching play. And he was just so strategic with the puck. And I was like, I want to be that guy. Obviously, at 30, or well, at the time, 29 years old, a little late into the game on that, but it was still fun, and I still have a lot of fun.
Was sport just not on your radar at all growing up?
No, I didn't. Never considered playing growing up. I would just go to games. Loved going to the Seattle Thunderbirds games, and never considered playing at the time.
Was it because of the sort of the locker room environment? Was that sort of part of it? Because when I do this podcast and I speak to a lot of people who are part of the community, it's intimidating, that sort of locker room culture and that sporting environment. Was that a factor in why you sort of didn't seek out playing sport?
No, in my case, no. I didn't. I just didn't have access to it, I would say, and it just wasn't something. I didn't grow up playing sports at all, so that's not something that I experienced personally. And so, uh, I I guess I just didn't uh, seek anything out. So I don't have that. Obviously, kids that grow up playing sports may experience something a little differently, but since I didn't play sports growing up, at 29, then it was something that I considered. I was like, what is my lifestyle going to have, or what is not, what is my lifestyle going to have an impact on my interaction with the team and the players? And I didn't, or excuse me, fortunately, I actually had a really supporting and welcoming team, thankfully, that actually had a couple of players just like me. And so it just worked out to be great, and a great impact. And so.
And what was it like growing up in Seattle? Can you explain Seattle to people who have obviously maybe never been there or don't know much about Seattle?
Yeah, Seattle is a very what's the word I'm looking for? A very progressive city, and so there's a lot of acceptance and inclusion in all sorts of different areas. You can walk down the street and hold your partner's hand, or whatever, and not fear anything, like getting targeted or any such way. Not to say that that doesn't exist, but it doesn't exist in other, like it would in other cities, say like the South, for example, which are very conservative and more towards your Bible Belt areas. So uh, it's always comforting, and I've never really, and I say this respectfully, but I've never really had to fear any sort of backlash of any sort of like display of affection, or I can go to downtown Seattle and just not worry. And so that is a nice thing to have and enjoy.
And you're always a hockey fan from a little kid, from a very young age.
Yes, probably since I was about 5 years old, as far back as I can remember.
What's your first memory of hockey as a kid? Do you remember that? And also, do you remember a certain point where, as a kid, you fell in love with the game?
Yep, I would. My dad would take me. We would get first row or row one seats, like up against the glass, and our family friend Brett. We always just had a really good time. I would bang on the glass when the players came over, and we're skating, and so it just was always a lot of fun and really high energy. I remember just the course of play, obviously very fast, and admittedly the fights were always exciting.
And then you obviously transitioned. You mentioned Matt Barzell, who's just a phenomenal player. If you want to watch some hockey, watch the Islanders and watch Matt in action. One of the best players in the NHL. So I can totally understand if you've seen someone like Matt Barzell up close and personal, that your love for hockey just continues to grow. When you took up hockey, you mentioned power skating. I read that you did power skating prior to actually playing hockey. For people who are sort of just starting out with hockey, why is that so important to do that? Because I know that you hold the power skating quite highly in transitioning into playing hockey.
Yeah, I started playing, or excuse me, I started out with just skating. A lot of players jump into a learn to play right away. So you're incorporating both the skating and the hockey element all at once. And it's a really difficult thing to learn. And so I did it a little differently, not because I wanted to, it's just how it worked out that way naturally, but it was a huge benefit. It was very advantageous because it allowed me to get my skating experience and under my belt and feel comfortable. So learning how to do seat cuts and crossovers and skating backwards along with seat cuts and crossovers while going backwards, and just high level, high speed movement. And so it was, and then when I threw on all the gear on top of it, I don't know, 6 months later, it was a whole different. I'm like, oh my gosh, now I've got a whole nother thing, like level of learning to do, because you have all the puck handling to add to that. And so um, I just, it definitely helped propel me and be more prepared for the game. You do see a lot of players that incorporate both at once, and then you see them enter the game, and of course we all have our levels of learning, but I just feel like learning skating separate from hockey is a huge advantage for everybody. And um, that's something that I would love for Seattle Pride Hockey Association to eventually offer, is like a power skating class before you transition to like a learn to play, for example, because it's a whole different mechanism. And I see players who are just starting out, and they take the learn to play, but they may not be fully prepared or ready, because you put them into a game environment, and they just seem kind of lost or unsure what to do, because they don't have the skills and abilities yet developed. Hockey is one of the most difficult sports to learn. That's for sure. So it helps if you break it down a little bit more minute.
Is it something that you think that people, especially adults who are picking up hockey like you did later on in life, should definitely look into? I suppose if you're a kid and you're just putting on some skates and a puck, you're a young kid, you sort of learn it as you go and as you grow. But as an adult picking up hockey later on in life, it seems like it's something that most people should look into.
I agree, and I definitely encourage people that are starting out that do reach out to us. It's not something that we run or operate right now, but people that reach out looking to learn to play, I always steer them to, hey, consider trying a power skating program first. And there are coaches around here that will teach you. It is obviously, hockey itself is not cheap, so it's something that you have to invest in and be willing to invest in. A power skating coach is going to cost you $60 for 30 minutes. And so it's $120 an hour. Not cheap by any stretch, but you'll get, it'll pay dividends eventually. And I think with mine it did. I'm not saying I'm an elite player. I consider myself like kind of on the low intermediate spectrum at best. When I'm really having a good game, maybe at the high beginner tier, even 7 years later. Granted, I don't play as much as I did. When I first started, we all do it, right? We all just go all in. And I was on the ice 5 days a week, every week for like the first couple of years. And I've tailored it way down, because the cost gets so expensive, right? And so I'm down to once a week, sometimes once every other week now. And of course, I have a social life too, so sometimes it's hard to incorporate both. But yeah, I think every player should definitely take a skating class separate first before going into a learn to play, just to have that advantage.
Well, you're definitely on a higher level than me when it comes to hockey. In 2018, you joined the adult recreation team. Was that as a gay person? Was that quite daunting? Was that something that you thought about before you joined? And did everything run through your head about will I be accepted? What will happen in this instance? Can you talk us through making that decision to put because it's a big step, and putting your foot into that locker room?
Yep, as I mentioned, it is something that I considered, having not played sports and having really not been in a locker room environment. I didn't know what to expect, and so I just went into the locker room not my like regular self. And so it's not like I'm portraying outwardly that I'm gay, but uh, if somebody asked, sure. And at the time, I wasn't familiar with Pride Tape either. I didn't know that it existed yet, and so it is absolutely something that I was worried about. And so I connected closely with one of the team managers, and she was just very warm and welcoming, and I felt really comfortable around her. And so I told her pretty early on that I was gay, and it wasn't a big deal. And I think we had like one or two gay players on the team, if I remember correctly. And so then it just like really helped ease my fears, right? Now, that's not to say that, okay, that's just our one team, right? There's 150 teams that play in this league. So I'm interacting with, in a division basis, 5 other teams. And then if on another season, maybe 5 or 6 other new ones. So um, I I was like, gosh, what if I put Pride Tape on? Because now fast forward a few months later, like I knew what Pride Tape was by then, and it's something that worried me. I was like, how are people going to react? So, but again, I put the Pride Tape on. There were no negative interactions with anybody. Nobody said anything. I wasn't targeted in any way. So it just made me feel more comfortable to just be myself. And so uh, didn't really have any bad experiences. So which again was what led to the formation of SPHA. Was I again, not everybody is as comfortable or as adventurous as me. So maybe they don't want to play because, oh my gosh, uh, as a trans person, like how are they going to feel, or are they just going to not play because they don't want to take that leap of faith? So SPHA is here as an organization to say you can play. This isn't something that you have to worry about, and is it kind of that resource for people to reach out to. So
Did you find that? And you might not have noticed it, but did you find other people being more comfortable seeing you being involved with hockey in that sense as a gay person?
that's something I don't know. I didn't see or witness, so I can't really speak to it. But I I do think there are a couple cases of other gay men that I've met in the Seattle area, whether just going on dates, for example. And one of them I'll use is um, Dean Partner. Hopefully, he doesn't mind that I use his name. But Dean and I met a number of years ago, um, and ended up being friends. And but I kind of pulled Dean out of retirement, if you will. He played juniors growing up, and I was just learning to play. And so we went to not a public skate, a stick and puck one day. I don't know if you guys call it puck and stick or stick and puck. There's different names based on the region, but um, he was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, and I'm not tooting my own horn or anything. He was like, "You just started learning to play like 6 months ago or 8 months ago." He was like, how? You're way better than I thought." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm not great." But anyways, I digress. So Dean kind of came out of retirement, and he just wasn't comfortable as a gay guy anymore to continue in the sport. And I mean, he just went all in. Like I put him on a team. I actually worked for the recreational hockey league that was here. I was kind of looking for a career change in 2019. I'd been in the transportation industry for a decade and was just looking for something new. And the adult league here was looking for somebody to kind of help reform the league and bring it to like the modern age, and be more uh, more efficient, and just all these different things. And it was all things that I could bring. And so I created a team, put Dean on it, and now he's still on that team, 6 years later. And as a matter of fact, I brought Dean and Chris to Western Cup in Calgary a year ago, and they ended up meeting. They hadn't met each other before. They ended up meeting and really hitting it off, and actually started dating. And so I don't know if you saw the pictures on our Instagram recently, but Chris proposed to Dean. So that's just one example. I'm sure there are others of the kind of things that the organization has helped do in that regard to help people feel comfortable.
It's such an amazing story. And I also wonder to myself a lot, how many really good hockey players from the LGBTIQ plus community we have lost just because of that, not having the confidence to continue playing in that environment. There must be
Yep,
so many great hockey players that have just walked away at sort of a young age.
totally. Most likely.
One of the things I did laugh about, because it reminded me of a person I had on as a guest in season 1, Noah. Can you tell us about when you started playing in the offside rule and learning the offside?
Oh,
Because
yes.
it made me laugh because Noah was exactly the same.
Was this Noah Wegener? Or is this
Noah Reisman.
Oh, I'm not familiar with who that is. Um, yeah, so when you step on the ice for the very first time in your very first game, there's just so much happening. You're trying to skate, you're trying to stick handle, you're trying not to fall on your tailbone. There's so many things running through it, and then there's a game coming at you, right? And so, like, they put me on wing to start, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what the heck to do. And they pass you the puck, and a million things are running through your mind, and you're just trying to like catch it, because not as easy as it looks. It literally, like, if you don't do it properly, it's going to bounce right off your stick like like a paddle. And so, um, yeah, so when the puck would go out, I just really wasn't paying attention, and I'm like, holy crap, I let me get back to the net, let me get back in the slot, try and score a goal. But meanwhile, the puck bounced out, and they can't bring it back in because I'm too busy like pass me the puck, pass me the puck, and anyways, so of course I fixed it all the next game. I'm like, and they're like, you got to come out during when it outside, and I'm like, oh yeah, duh, hello, and so yeah.
Yeah, it was
Just a
quite funny because
thing to add to the list of things to do, right?
yeah, and when Noah grew up in Boston and then moved to Australia and lives in Australia now, and only started playing hockey in Australia. But Noah was just standing in the offensive zone, and there was offsides here and there and everywhere. So when I read a bit about you, it just made me laugh that you're not the only one. You're not the only one out there.
Okay, good. I'm glad. It was definitely an embarrassing moment.
Um, and then you teamed up with Joey Gale, obviously, to co-found Seattle Pride Hockey Association. And I did recently watch Joey do an awesome job on Arc Seattle, I think it is, with the interview. It was great. But you seen, I think it was Joey that you seen leaving the rink with Pride tape. And that was a bit of you sort of didn't know what Pride tape was. You mentioned that before, and then you sort of found out what Pride tape was. And then from there, can you talk us through that scenario, and then the sort of SPHA coming, sort of evolving from that, is what it sounded like?
Yep. So as an article so eloquently states recently, my gaydar went off. And so, of course, I knew what Pride Tape was by then, but I had never seen it kind of out in the wild, if you will. And so I was working for the league at the time, and that was the first time I had seen it. So I got really excited, and I didn't notice it till he was almost out the door. I don't know why. I think I heard a noise, and I turned around and I saw his stick, and I ran up to him, and I'm like, you got Pride Tape on. And yeah, so we just kind of hit it off from there, and I was like, I, of course, trying to be, conscious of what you say, and I didn't want to presume, and so I just said, I'm family, and he was like, I am too, and so, anyways, yeah, we, of course, having that inside, um, in at the league, I can kind of just put people where I want them, right? And so I, of course, stole Joey from the general pool and put him on with us because why not, right? So yeah, that's Joey joined the team and just became a really good friend. And again, we connected probably over drinks or something weeks later, and I I had talked about, I was like, there's New York City Gay Hockey Association, there's Boston Pride Hockey, there's Chicago, you name it, so on and so forth. And I said, why doesn't Seattle have one? And I said, we really, and I explained my story. I said, like, I was scared. I didn't know what to expect. And now here I am working for and running one of the largest adult hockey leagues in the country. I think San Jose, California is the largest, and we're like the second. But um, I'm like, we need to create this organization to help bring this kind of voice to the community so people feel comfortable playing. And we didn't even have the Kraken yet. That wasn't even, a blip on anybody's mind. Nothing had even started on that yet. And so, um, of course, when that all came around, I was like, we're gonna, experience tremendous growth and other things. So, anyways, that's how. At the time, Seattle Gay Hockey Association was born in the basement of one of the local ice arenas. And when the Kraken happened about a year later, we met with their team, and I had some inside contacts at the Kraken, and I said, we want to connect with you, and this is what we're planning on doing. We haven't gone to market with it yet. We haven't done anything. And their vice president of social impact suggested, why don't you flip gay to pride or some other like more broader word rather than just gay, because that's going to silo you to just gay men. And I was like, that makes complete sense. So that's where we flipped it to pride. Now, obviously, I would say kind of the largest demographic is the LGBT community, but there are other demographics as well that we do get to share the game with. So yeah, that's the story with Joey.
How massive is it to have the backing of the Kraken in the NHL with everything that you do with SPHA?
Significant. We had a roundtable discussion in 2020 when COVID was happening. We had planned a tournament in 2020, and obviously that got shuttered. So we did the roundtable with the Kraken and You Can Play and Symmetra, Kraken's founding sponsor. And so when they approached us about it, like a week in advance, they said, we want to do this thing next week for Pride Month. And I was like, oh my God, we don't even have a website. We just have social media, which had no posts or anything. But we didn't even have a website at the time because things were just like slow, obviously with COVID. And I was like, we weren't in any hurry. We were going through all the like government incorporation process as a nonprofit. And so I just threw a website together because I knew this was going to gain a lot of traction from that kind of roundtable with everybody, especially with the Kraken publishing it. And so sure enough, we got several thousand website hits that day that I launched, and several hundred people signed up for an email list that would eventually be our email list. And so it was significant. And then they've given us, and they, as in the Seattle Kraken, have given us tremendous support twice now in terms of some financial contributions. They were very generous the first year their first season that they played for the annual Pride Night event. They donated half of their jersey proceeds to us, and they did that again just a couple months ago in March. And then the NHL itself has been a huge supporter of many organizations nationwide. But they send somebody each year to the Pride Classic just to help us with a lot of different things, but also because we have pro players that are part of the tournament. We kind of reach out and we get pro players to come be a part of it. So this year will be the largest turnout of pro players with JT Brown, Jessica Platt, Luke Prokop, Andrew Ferentz, and then from the PWHL side, Erin Ambrose, and then Elizabeth, and I can't pronounce her name, so I'm not going to do it because I will butcher it. But that's 6 players that we'll have here this year, and so the NHL is sending Nora again to help kind of just manage all those players from an operations perspective. But also, the NHL has also given us some financial support as well. JT Brown did a donation last year, and then this year the NHL donated a sum of money to help us launch the Seattle Pride Hockey League, which we launched 2 months ago. I think it was almost 2 months ago. So it's our first league. It's not something that we ever thought we would do, but people have been asking us for it for a couple of years. And I just wanted to wait until we had like the proper kind of size, like we had enough people to help support it, but also enough players that would be interested in it. So we did like a soft, what do you call it, an expression of interest, EOI, to see what the community wanted. And I think like 150 people signed up in the first couple of days. And it's just saying like, yeah, I would be interested in this. That's all it really is. And like, here's the days I'm available. Here's what rinks I would prefer. Here's what game times I would like. And so it's like, I'm like, okay, I think we can do this. And so I reached out to the NHL and I said, this is something, I was like, here's our data that supports this, and we could use some financial support. Can you help? And they were like, yeah, we can do that. And here we are.
I think it's great to have that support from the Kraken, the NHL, and all those organisations, especially with a lot of the backlash from the Pride tape that we'd obviously seen through the NHL. It's good to hear that they're actually still doing a lot of things that a lot of people probably obviously don't see as well. A lot of the good things that they do. A lot of people just see the Pride tape. So that's really good. The SPHA has obviously had significant growth, and I was going to ask you about the league. Was that something that was pushed by you guys on the board / committee, however you describe it? Was that a push to have a league from the players as well? Were they sort of saying, hey, we can have a league here?
It was mostly me driving that conversation by hearing the echoes from the community of people wanting it. And so I brought it up and I said, I think we need to do this. And so the organization supported it. But it came down to funding. We didn't, it takes a lot of capital to lift that kind of stuff off. And so we wanted to do it responsibly and not kind of burn through all the money that we had. And so it delayed it a couple months, but I think it was worth it just to make sure we did it the right way and not, kind of lose money and what's the word I'm looking for? Put us upside down. And so I think with the NHL support, it really helped give us that buoy to make it happen.
And one of the really cool things, I think, anyway, from the SPHA is the training. The new you've launched like a training through SPHA. Is that for players who are under your umbrella, or is that for anyone who wants to look at playing hockey? They can come in and do that training. Can you talk us through that as well? Because I think that's really cool.
It's for anybody. Anybody can sign up. It's open to the community. Anybody that wants to be a part of it. We just wanted to do something a little differently by partnering with the UW women's hockey coaches so they can provide that on-ice component. But hockey's twofold, right? So you've got the physical agility piece of it, but you also have kind of the physical wellness piece of it. Making sure you're having the right diet, you're doing the right exercises, you're eating right, you're hydrating. So we brought in Justin Rogers from the Seattle Kraken, the assistant athletic trainer, to share his knowledge about what the elite professionals do to train and prepare for their games on a daily basis. What stretches do they do? What kind of carbs or proteins they're eating, so on and so forth. So it was kind of twofold, right? And I think the feedback we got from it was really positive, and people learned a lot. And so, because obviously we're all adults, some of us from a wide spectrum of ages with all different physical types and physical abilities. And so, but we all have to go to work the next day, but we also want to perform well as well. So I think it was just really highly educational, and it's not something that anybody does here. And so it felt like a great thing to offer to the community.
And SPHA do consulting as well. Is part of that born out of the reputation that SPHA has built for itself within the community, the local community?
Yes, absolutely. We're very fortunate to have been featured on a lot of local and national TV programs, and that has caused people to reach out, which is great. We've had several companies reach out to us, to just, very notably small businesses, right, that don't have the resources or people with the expertise or knowledge on how to create like a DEI program, for example, or how to create an inclusive workspace and what that looks like. So it's very soft. It's like a very soft kind of offer, if you will. It's not even really necessarily like something that we outwardly project, but it's just something that we've done over the years. And so I think, like, the Seattle Thunderbirds have reached out because they wanted to host a Pride Night. So what does that look like? We don't want to just do it just to do it because it's June, and we want to turn our logo to a rainbow logo like a lot of companies do for the month of June, right? Like they wanted to have meaning and purpose behind it. And so that was where some of the organization members got together and met with the Seattle Thunderbirds and said, if you want to do a Pride Night, here's kind of your marching orders on why and how you should do it. Not just do it just because you can and you think it's great, but you need to have a mission kind of behind it on why. And so, and then we've actually had a couple, again, roundtables, but in person at the company's facilities, PitchBook and then Cox Automotive, local companies here in Seattle, just on creating an inclusive space and what that looks like and things like that in front of their employees, so their employees can ask questions, and whether it's managers or other leaders. And we just did it a couple weeks ago with Cox, and then I think about a year ago with PitchBook.
And the reason that we organised to have you on in May for the episode of May is we spoke about a little bit before. You got the Seattle Pride Classic coming up from June 7 to 9, I think it is. Hopefully I got that right. For
Yes.
people who have never heard of Seattle Pride Classic and are tuning into this podcast for the first time, how big is Seattle Pride Classic? If you could explain it to someone very new to the Seattle Pride Classic.
It's a tremendous event. I'll just put it that way. So I think we're in this is a very humble brag, but I think we're officially like one of the largest LGBTQ pride hockey tournaments ever produced. I think two other organizations, their peak was at 18 teams. This year we're going to have 20, and that equals to about 300 players, which is significant. And so, and really, when ultimately Joey and I, but obviously the broader organizational leaders, when we came together in 2019, at the time planning for 2020, we didn't want to just throw another tournament into the cog of tournaments, both locally and nationally. There are a lot of tournaments on both sides here in Seattle and nationally. And we wanted to do something a little differently. So we started small and we went with the draft program because one of our pillars, if you will, is like building community. And when we looked at and having played in other tournaments, both locally and nationally, everybody participates as a team, right? And so everybody, for example, in Timbuktu, you bring your team of 15 and you come to Seattle and you just play hockey and you hang out with your team. And so we wanted to flip that narrative by doing it all draft. And we received a lot of pushback, and a lot of the other organizations, and not a lot, but a few of the organizations reached out to us and said, we would love to come to Seattle, but we want to play as a team. We don't want to do the draft thing. And I said, that's not what we're going to do. And that's fine. If you don't want to come as an individual, that's okay. And so, but it's something that's really worked to our benefit, because you look back at Chris and Dean, right? Granted, they didn't meet at our tournament, but there's similar examples of that. And we're just building friendships for life, and we're building a community. And ultimately what happens is I come and play, and then I go home and I tell 5 people about it. This is something you really want to go to and you really want to try out. Sure, we may not be on a team together, but you're going to meet 5 new friends that are going to be friends for life. And so, we have players that come down from all over the country to hang out with the people that they've met here and vice versa. And so I think that's just it's a testament of like the building community and things like that. And so, and we can go on to the other aspects of the tournament, like the pro player presence and all the All Stars of Pride thing, a program that we added a couple years, 2 years. It'll be 3 years this year. And this year we're adding a formal welcome reception that I'm really excited about. It's something that people have been asking for a long time, but we've really just shied out of it because of the cost and the lift to like make it all happen, right? It's so expensive, and it just takes a huge army of people to make everything happen. And I'm really like proud of the people that I've helped assemble behind the organization and the tournament itself. These people are working hard, and it's all out of a love of the game and the sport and the community. And so Seattle Pride Classic is really a tremendous event.
Where do the players come from? Is it just North America, or do they come from all over the world?
Well, this year we've got 5 or 7 people coming from Australia.
Yep.
We've got Cade, who unfortunately won't be able to play, but and actually I think Cade may not even make it at this point. I think he had to have some surgery, but I think there's 6 others that are coming. And so but generally from BC and Alberta, and then we've got people all the way from Massachusetts, New York, and then everything in between. And I would say about 35% of the people are travel. There are other, 65% are probably local, roughly.
And what has the Seattle Pride Classic achieved since its very first launch?
Can you kind of
just in terms of community of the LGBTIQ plus community? What does it achieve for a lot of people that you have seen since it's launched?
I would say like the quotes and the feedback that we get are pretty impactful. I mean, these are the things that really fuel us to continue doing this. It's an exhausting thing to produce, admittedly, but then at the end, when we get all the quotes and the feedback and things from everybody, it's I mean, these are just really impactful quotes. And I will say too, for example, last year we kind of, and I say this very lightly, like we broke our own rule in terms of a draft only tournament. We invited Team Trans to bring 2 teams to Seattle. Now, the reason why we did that is because the trans community was under attack last year. And so we wanted to highlight them and give them an opportunity to play as Team Trans. Now, Team Trans is not a team per se. It is a collection of people from all over the country that randomly assemble and play in local cities. So there's several hundred Team Trans members. And so in this case, we allowed them to, or offered them 2 spots or 2 team spots for last year. So, and that said, for the upper division team, they sent an upper and like a more friendly beginner team. They ended up winning or taking first place. And now, granted, yeah, we all we do highlight that a little bit, but the ultimate meaning of the tournament isn't about hoisting trophies or taking first place, but that is celebrated. But that said, like Team Trans had never, ever, ever, ever in all their years won a tournament outside of just Team Trans itself. So Team Trans hosts their own tournament each year. So obviously, one team wins. So this was their first time playing and winning outside of the tournament, and it was a really spectacular moment. I remember kind of just waiting for the final countdown, and when the clock hit 0, and all of them just like rushing to each other to like give each other a hug. I mean, it was kind of like this like human pile of excitement. They all just like, if kind of like top of each other, but like I like looked around and everybody was, had like happy tears because you could just see the joy that they had. And it was a really good game too. If I remember, it was like a 3-2 score or something. I could be wrong, but um, and I don't know if you had an opportunity to watch it, but it actually was featured on Good Morning America last year over national television. So I think that right now is kind of like the highlight of the tournament, is providing that space for them to have that opportunity.
I've asked a few people that have come on this show with organisations like Seattle Pride Hockey Association, etc. The hockey is obviously a really big component of it and an important part of it. It's where it all starts from. But do you find that SPHA and other it becomes more about the community and not and the hockey's there obviously, but the community becomes a really big important part where people have friends, have a place to go where they can be comfortable to be themselves, etc.
Yeah, and I think if I'm answering your question, understanding your question correctly, I think the just seeing the turnout from the crowds or the spectators has been tremendous. In fact, I remember during our All Stars of Pride game last year, we did a huge outreach to the community to say, please come support the All Stars of Pride. It's a marquee game. And really, this game itself is to celebrate all of the participants that really went above and beyond. So, the All Stars of Pride, just for background, is 30 people are nominated from the entire tournament, and at least one person per team. And then it kind of goes from the most nominations downward from there. Um, these people are the people that like made the tournament more fun or inclusive or accepting or welcoming, or just elevated somebody that may have been brand new to the game and not very in an uncomfortable environment. And so anyways, 30 players out of last year 250 got to participate in this. And so I was like, they deserve to be recognized and honored. And so I remember we reached out and did huge outreach and some social media blitzes, and um, I think we publicized like 2:30 would be the it's kind of the time. And I just remember watching these hordes and hordes and hordes of people pouring into the arena, and I'm like, oh my god, like, are we gonna run out of room? And thankfully, it all worked out. Like it was the bleachers were full. The arena holds about 500 people, and we probably had 475 ish show up. Um, and so I was just so happy to see the support of the community, to be there to support these 30 players. So
Yeah, that's awesome. It's really great that it's not just the players; people go there and support and cheer and get around each other. I think it's really cool and it's an important part for the community. Um, what's your greatest moment being involved in queer hockey?
oh gosh, I think just putting on Seattle Pride Classic is something I look forward to it, and I know Joey probably gets mad at me from time to time because I have to ride his coattails on making sure things get done. But uh, I it all is a labor of love. And so when the tournament weekend rolls around, it's just so humbling to see all of your work, because we literally like the weekend will end and we'll already be planning next year. And so, but it's just humbling to like see all of your work. Um, and by all of our work, I mean collectively everybody that's a part of it, to see it all in action.
And this might be the same answer, but what is your proudest moment within queer hockey?
Um, I would say obviously Seattle Pride Classic, but I think now the Seattle Pride Hockey League, uh, that is just it's a program that I largely helped drive to fruition, and so seeing it cross that finish line and like watching the first games happen, it was just so rewarding. And I will say too, just like Seattle Pride Classic, we didn't want to just throw another league into the cog of leagues. There's about 15 leagues around the greater Seattle area, so there's no shortage of opportunity for people. But I wanted to create Seattle Pride Hockey League to be a little bit different than just the other leagues, and so we created this thing called Play with Purpose, and so we chose the Trevor Project as our beneficiary. So what happens is we chose a beneficiary. We publicized that as all part of the like launch of Seattle Pride Hockey League. And during registration, we introduced, our Play with Purpose. This beneficiary this year is the Trevor Project. So people had an opportunity to donate as part of their registration. So you could add $100, you could add 50, whatever, and then we took those donations, which was $500, is what we collected, and then SPHA matched those donations for a total of 1,000, and uh, all the players wear a patch on their jersey. It's a big patch. It's just the Trevor Project logo, and then during the first, so there's 4 teams, so 2 games happened on the first day, and so we kind of presented a check to the Trevor Project by way of photography because they couldn't have anybody be here, but that was just super exciting. And then um, yeah, Trevor Project actually sent us an email today, coincidentally, that they are, you know, the donation was very impactful, and here's how we used the money, and here's a quote from somebody where your dollars had a positive impact. So that was just really nice to see.
That's amazing. You're doing a mountain of work, Stephen, and the Seattle Pride Hockey Association. What it's done for community and hockey globally, not just Seattle area or North America, globally. It's really inspiring, and you should be really proud of what you've been able to accomplish with the Seattle Pride Hockey Association, and it's only going to continue to grow. As we mentioned, the Seattle Pride Classic is on June 7 to 9 at Seattle Kraken Community Iceplex. Is there anything you want to plug outside of the Seattle Pride Classic before I let you go? Places people can go or anything else?
Yeah, I would say visit our website, seattleprideclassic.com, and you can see what the tournament is all about. There's a plethora of information on the website, and sometimes we publish too much, but more is less, right? And so, yeah, I would be honored to have your presence in any way, and obviously looking for volunteers if anybody's looking to help out.
Well, this has been awesome, Stephen. I'm really glad to have you on as a part of the Pride and Puck podcast for this episode. I wish you all the best with the Seattle Pride Classic and SPHA moving forward. As I said, it's really cool what you're doing and continue to doing for the community. Thanks for coming on the show, and I look forward to all the photos and the videos from the Pride Classic.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
This is a Pride and Puck podcast. You can find us at Pride Puck Pod on the socials at hockeyhypeaustralia.com.au. We are part of the Hockey Hype Australia podcast network. Until next month, I'll speak to you then.